Welcome to the history of Africa, guys. So, we're going to look at how Africa has evolved, how it was before, and what were the changes that were brought into this country. Continent. Okay. So, yes, as you already know, Africa is the second largest continent, guys. It's extremely diverse in its culture. It has tribal, Western, Arabic culture, and we also know that it is considered as the cradle of mankind earlier, where we believe that the out of Africa theory emerges from that we first originated in Africa and then migrated to other places. So we can see that Africa is an extremely important continent. Okay, so let's first look at some of the ancient African civilizations. So three of these that stand out are: number one, the ancient Egypt, that was found towards the northeast of Africa. Over there, we know there were formations of pyramids, very famous for their pharaohs, and then we have the Nile River that also is connected towards Egypt and then moves on towards the Mediterranean Sea. And then we have Carthage, that is a very powerful city state in modern day Tunisia. Okay, which is located where towards the north central region, and towards the third, that is towards the west, we have the Mali Empire. Now the Mali Empire was very famous because of this one guy as you can see right below the map picture. There is a picture of a man holding a golden globe, right? So that guy is called as Mansa Musa. If you actually go on the internet, guys, and just search who is the richest man in history even today, then the answer would be Mansa Musa. He is he was extremely rich and continues to hold that status. Okay, so these are some important civilizations that you should know about in terms of Africa. So what happened after these ancient civilizations? They were flourishing, but post that we see that they started to decline and new empires started to come about. Now what were these new empires, guys? These new empires were um, the Ghana Empire, Songhai Empire, and the Great Zimbabwe Empire. But right before them, if you see these three empires, that is the ancient Egypt, Carthage, and Mali Empire, what they also encouraged was the Trans Sahara trade route. Now, why Trans Sahara trade route? Look, let's go back. If you can see the map over here, we have Egypt, we have Tunisia, and we have Mali. All of them are located where, guys? Towards the north, and over there, we have a very big chunk of a desert. Which desert do we have, guys? That is the Sahara Desert, correct? So, what these three empires started to do was they started to trade with each other, and that trade in turn became as the Trans Sahara trade. Now, what did they transport or trade amongst each other? Three things were very controversial as well. Okay, number one was gold, number two was salt, and number three was slaves. Yes, you heard me right, slaves. So were slaves earlier, used within these three empires? So because these were empires, they required a lot of people to work. So within Africa itself, too, you see over here there was slavery that was going on. Okay, in not because of racial reasons, but obviously because of employment reasons and social status reasons. Okay, so that is how it took place, and it was because of the Trans-Sahara trade in turn that we see that from West Asia the entire spread of Islam also takes place, and these countries also have a rich Arabic culture. Okay, now moving on next, so we had the Egyptian, ancient Egypt, we had Carthage and Mali that further on gets replaced or overridden, overstrengthened by these other empires. Which are the other three empires? Very important to the history of Africa. Number one is the Ghana Empire, which became successful because of the gold trade from the Trans Sahara trade route. Number two is the Songhai Empire, which continued, and even today, it remains the largest empire in African history. And the third is the Great Zimbabwe, which came into power because of its trade of stones. Okay, so they would have stone ruins which they would trade with the other empires, which eventually made them very successful. So, guys, which are the ancient ones? We had ancient Egypt, then Carthage, and then we had Mali. And post that, we had obviously the Trans Sahara trade route, which empowered new empires like the Ghana Empire, Songhai Empire, and Great Zimbabwe, and which is the largest of these, Songhai Empire. Okay. Now, pose this, guys. While all of these things were going on, there were empires flourishing in Africa. We see that because of the spread of gold, many European countries had become interested in Africa. And the first European country that ventured into Africa were the Portuguese in search of gold. Okay, so you can see this, the early Portuguese, they started exploring the West African coast because of the search of gold. Now look at this, Portugal. Why Portugal? Because they are just separated by the Strait of Gibraltar from the continent of Africa. Otherwise there's nothing stopping them just walking across as well. Okay, so yeah, that is why, because of geographical proximity to the continent of Africa, Portugal had an advantage and it seized it. Moving on, next we see that post the Portuguese, and also post the discovery of quinine. Now I want to show you this. I think we've already talked about it, but quickly just recapping. So previously, even before the Portuguese came, it was in the 19th century, or previously before that, Africa was called as a dark continent. Why? Now look at this map. This is a map that I've got from one of the books that was used by the European explorers earlier. Okay, so can you see the middle region being called as what? Inland parts, almost widely unknown, right? So why is it so? Because it was completely unknown for the Europeans what is going on in the middle. Now, why was it unknown? Because of two reasons. Number one was tribal people. Can you see over here? The one which is highlighted, that its immense and arid sands are intersected with a complete collection of the most ferocious beasts and the most uncivilized men. So basically, they had encountered the tribal people who obviously at that time were very dangerous and fearful, right? Fierce. And that is how they knew that, okay, we cannot have contact with the tribal people. So that was one thing that was stopping the Europeans. And number two, guys, yes, correct, malaria. So it was only when the cure for malaria was found, that is, quinine was found by these two French men who were one day just playing with chemicals. They found out that, hey, we have a clear course now to go to Africa, because we have the cure for malaria. And also, guys, they had successfully had a contact with the tribes of South America. So they had an idea of how you should establish contact with the tribal people. Okay, so you can see over here there are a lot of people that used quinine for colonization: Dutch in Indonesia, French in Algeria, British in India, Jamaica, many places, right? And even west of Africa. Okay. Now, guys, what happens post colonization? We see that post colonization, Africa is actually divided into fragments. Okay, it is basically cut into pieces of cakes. Why? Because there are so many European countries occupying different places. For example, the French were in Algeria and Benin, right? And British were in Ghana. So we could see that Africa was divided among the European powers. And in order to make this legalized, like to put it on paper, there was a conference, that is a Berlin Conference in 1884, whereby uh, the entire continent of Africa was divided into pieces. And that is how, guys, we have the saying that Africa was cut as pieces of cake by the Berlin Conference. So this is how it is. Then obviously we had the colonial rule in Africa that led to slave trade. It also led to oppression and unwanted pregnancies, spread of HIV, sexual diseases, and many others, which even linger today. Many sexual diseases continue to linger in Africa even today, because of the period of colonization. Okay, so yeah, what is the impact of colonization? It affected people where there was a separation between the Africans who stayed in North America and South America and the Africans who are home. So you will now see that, guys, people who were in Africa, okay, they did not like the people who went to North America and South America. Why? Because there is not all of these Africans were forced to be as slaves. Some of them were willingly going to be as slaves. Why? Because they were brainwashed and had accepted their fate of being slaves. And the reason for that is when the Europeans encountered them, they told them, hey, you are barbaric, you are uncultured. Look at us, we are cultured, we wear beautiful clothes, right? So and then they were made to believe that, hey, this is your destiny, God made you this way so that we could rule over you. So that is how, guys, the brainwashing took place, and some Africans willingly went as slaves. Okay, so, guys, this in turn also impacted the divide between those Africans back home and those Africans in North America and South America. So, today you will see a lot of cultural difference. So, somebody who, a black American, would be more closer to an American than he or she would be close to his or her African roots, possibly. Okay. Number two, what was the impact of colonization? Loss of a lot of artifacts. So there's a lot of items that were lost from the great empires of the Ghana, Great Zimbabwe, Songhai, Mali, like Mansa Musa's uh, stuff. They were all stolen and they were taken back to their to by their colonizing countries. Okay, so they also lost their artifacts, their cultural artifacts that were very important to them. So yeah, that. Moving on, then we had the movement for independence. So there were a lot of key figures, one of which is very, very prominent, that is Nelson Mandela, who helped get the African countries independence by 1950s to 1960s. So post World War II, guys, is where we see that African countries started to get independence. Okay, because why? Even during World War One and World War Two, a lot of Africans were used as soldiers who were killed unnecessary between the wars of European countries. What does an African have to do between these two European countries who are fighting with each other? So they had to compromise their life. They had to give their life away for a cause which was not even theirs. So this in turn had driven a lot of hatred towards the Europeans and a desire for independence, which was led by these great leaders. Now, post colonization, what is going on? So, a lot of countries in Africa got independent, but today, even after independence, they are no far than being underdeveloped, because they do not have those type of capacities where they can in a way develop themselves. They are economically backward, socially backward. There's so many issues that are going on. Now look at this, very interesting. Okay, it's a social phenomena that is happening, guys. When a lot of people are poor, okay, at that time you cannot expect poor people to think for each other. They are going to think about themselves. The first instinct that will come to the mind is survival of the fittest. They are definitely not going to think, oh, let me be good. Okay, you can be good once or twice, but not everybody can do that. Okay, not everybody has a seraphic nature or an angelic nature whereby they'll just let go of themselves. They are not artlessness in nature. Okay, so yeah, a lot of these issues eventually led to Africa, even today, becoming a continent that is trying to or struggling to survive in some places. Okay, with this we come to an end of the history of Africa, and this is just something that I wanted to show you as the end. Africa is not just a place; it is an emotion, a state of being where the rhythm of life beats in harmony with the pulse of the wild. Beautiful saying. Okay, with this we are done. Bye bye.